My Aunt Dorothy is a wild, wild person. I mean, she treats my mother like absolute crap. Yeah, she helped her when she was younger because, well, she didn't really have anyone to lean on. But that does not give my aunt the excuse to do what she did. And guys, this story gets really deep and really dark really quickly.
Everybody has that one relative who thinks they have a free pass to people's houses, right? They come snooping whenever they get the chance, and I know that someone might have popped into your head by now. In my case, it's my aunt, as in my mom's sister, Dorothy. Why does she think that she can come around anytime she wants? It's because she raised my mom Claire when their parents, my grandparents, passed. My aunt and her husband have been freeloaders all their lives. Our relatives are pretty done with them, to be honest, and in order to get rid of them, they sent the family to live in our town. Let me divulge a little backstory to clear things out. My mom was a teenager at the time my grandparents died in a car accident. After their sudden demise, my mom would have to go to a children's home. My aunt and her husband Jackson were forced to take her in by our relatives. My mom was unwanted liability in the family. My aunt was the youngest, so she had to listen to everyone. My aunt and her husband are freeloaders and have zero existence without the help of the family. My maternal family is close-knit, and they would all provide for my aunt's family. They had all promised my great-grandfather, who was 95 years old, who was miraculously still alive, that they'd take care of my mom and my aunt. All of them wanted to be in my great-grandfather's good books, for all of his inheritance. They were all two-faced hypocrites, if you ask me. My aunt married Jackson when she was young and did not know any better, and Jackson did odd jobs, and most of the time he did not have a job at all. Everyone despises Jackson, but they could not do anything because of the promise they made to my great-grandfather. My mom bore the burden of doing house chores and raising Dorothy's children. Evan. Jackson is a drunk and very abusive. He would hit my mom if anything was not done right, according to him. He expected my mom to serve their family because she lived with them and they provided her with a home. Dorothy followed his ways because she was happy that my mom was taking all the responsibility and being made to do all the work. You could say my mom was a, quote, Cinderella of the family. She would cook and clean with no appreciation in return. Dorothy, Jackson, and the rest of my mom's relatives kept what my mom inherited. My mother did not really say much about it. She was grateful she had a home in the first place, and they had all conditioned her to believe she would just always be grateful that Dorothy and her other relatives took care of her. My great-grandfather would ensure that my mom gets treated right, but he did not have his eyes everywhere. She eventually moved out of that hellhole when she met my dad, Clark. My dad has spent his whole life going from rags to riches, and he has worked hard to build a pretty good life for our family. And you can say that we're doing really well for ourselves. He believes in helping people, as he would not be who he is without the few people who have helped him in his life. My parents never got the education they wanted, so they strongly believed their daughter would get it. I recently got my undergrad degree, and my father paid my whole tuition, so I'm debt-free, and I'm an only child. My parents moved to the town we live in, and I was born here. I've pretty much lived here all my life, except for the time I was at university, and I've moved back home, and I wanted to take a little break until I get an actual job. I work as an intern here. My dad cooks extremely well, and he has put his blood and sweat into making a renowned restaurant. My dad recently put most of his savings into starting a new one of the neighborhood town, and his dreams of having a chain of restaurants. Our lives were pretty peaceful until Dorothy and Jackson moved here with their good-for-nothing daughter Jess, who's 19 and female, around a year ago. Jess was born after my mother married to my father and moved out. Jackson thought it would be better to move because he could not afford rent in their old town, and he just wanted to move here because we live here, and they would have someone that they know nearby. My relatives highly encouraged it so that they could finally get rid of the family. My mom had been instructed by her family to take care of them, make sure that they settled in well. Dorothy's son works at a bank, and my mom was not really happy they were moving here, but they were insistent, and there was nothing she could do to stop them. Little did we know that they would be so chaotic and wreak havoc on our lives. My parents did their best to help them settle in. My mom was bound by her duty towards them, and my dad is just very helpful in general. They would call their family over for meals until they got settled in, and they never did get, quote, settled in. They kept coming over for every single meal, and now it was a habit. Dorothy does not cook at all at her house, and my mom has to make everything. We realized that there's no polite way of telling them not to come, so we just went with it. I tried to help my mom as much as I could. Dorothy would not even put her plate in the sink, and they treated our house like a restaurant. Jackson and Jess would leave as soon as they were full, but Dorothy would stay at ours the whole day. She would watch TV at our house all day long, and she said that she could not watch it at her own house because Jackson would sit there and watch TV all day. She thought she would give my mother company too. She wanted to be treated like a guest all the time, and I don't know, someone had to be there to tend to her needs. She would not even get to have her own water. My mom had to work all day, and if my mom sat down for even a second, Dorothy would give her something to do. Our personal space was now gone, completely vanished. We had stopped spending time as a family completely, and that really just annoyed me. Heck, they annoyed me. They would take whatever they wanted and use what they needed without asking or seeking permission. I'm an only child, and I don't have the habit of sharing very well at all. I once fight with Jess because she would take my clothing, but my father told me off and asked me to be more accommodating. My mom could not say anything against them either. Living in my own house was so suffocating. We had no privacy as a family, and no sense of ownership over our own stuff. Dorothy would come over and just bicker about anything being untidy, but she would not help with a single chore. Our lives have turned into absolute hell. One day at dinner, my dad suggested that Jess pursues a degree. Jess just stayed at home and did nothing but scroll on the phone the entire day. Jackson and Dorothy thought it was a wonderful idea, but they turned the conversation around and deliberately misunderstood that my dad would pay for it. My dad complied, and my eyes widened in horror. How could my father do that? I knew it would spell trouble in the future, and after they left, I fought with my dad. But my mom, she stayed quiet. My mom's relatives were all praising my dad for his act, and deep inside, I hated the idea. Jess was preparing to be sent off to college. At least, Mom had one less person to cook for and clean up after. Around a month later, our family hit some financial issues. There was a fire at my father's restaurant, and the insurance company refused to bail us out. We were put out of business for a few months and lost quite a bit of money. The damage done was huge, and the whole thing was very stressful for my father. And well, he suffered a heart attack. Dorothy did not even visit him at the hospital, giving the excuse they did not want to get sick from the people at the hospital. Her family would still show up at her house for breakfast and dinner, though. My mom and I did not really have the time to cook. She complained about how the food was not good, and I wasn't really in the right mind to defend or argue with them. I just thought I was going to lose my father. Their audacity did anger me, though. It was like they did not have any heart at all. They didn't even show the slightest bit of concern for my father, and Jackson went as far as calling my dad a weak link and laughing. My mom was in tears, and Dorothy would not even console her. She said that the heart attack is very common and that my mom should be prepared for anything. She told my mom that she should be happy because she'll be free from the shackles of marriage. Dorothy even asked me whether my father had written a will or not, and I screamed and told them to leave. I could not control my anger at that moment. My mom told me to hush, and I started arguing with him. And Jackson actually raised his hand to slap me. My mom came in between and stopped him. I was shocked. I could not move after the whole thing, and we decided to stay at the hospital after the whole event went down, and I wanted to call the police. But my mother stopped me. She said it was important for us to take care of Dad rather than handle the police. Soon, my dad got better, and we brought him home from the hospital. When he did feel a bit better, Dorothy and Jackson went back to their old ways and acted as if nothing even happened. My dad did not know what went down, and we did not want to stress him further, so we acted like nothing happened either, and Jess asked my dad for money for her tuition fees. We had suffered quite a bit, and a lot financially, and we told the family they were going to have to pay for it themselves after everything that's happened. Then Jess throws this giant tantrum, and she said she did not want to go to college in the first place. She argued that we would not just back out now. Dorothy said they did not have that kind of money, and we advised Jess to take out a student loan like everyone else, and the family was adamant that we pay for her because we promised. My dad tried his best but could not arrange anything, and we could not even make our own ends meet. Dorothy's family over for lunch made things a lot worse. The restaurant was off to a slow start, and the business was losing money left and right, and accounts had run out of money too. We were paying out of our own pockets, and we had already put a lot of money into opening a new restaurant. Now we had to manage both of them. Dorothy kept throwing tantrums over us being unable to pay for Jess. She said that we'd better pay the tuition fees for the next few years. She kept pressuring my dad and bringing it up, and Jackson kept gambling and losing all of his money. I could not take their everyday drama anymore, so I fought with them. My mom got mad at me and said that we had to take care of them because they took care of my mom. She got emotional and said that things could have been worse for her. Well, I didn't agree with her. I didn't want to add to her problem, so I kept my mouth shut. I despised their whole family, and my mom's relative called and tormented her over the whole situation. They told her that my dad should not make promises he cannot keep. The whole scenario was so embarrassing for our family. Jess's expenses grew, and you see, she lived in an apartment all to herself and would often eat out and party. She worked at their supermarket, but the money she earned did not suffice. She had constantly poor grades, and she would come home at the weekend and blame my father for ruining her mental health by forcing her to go to college. My father still had to pay for everything, and she would not quit because she was enjoying her life in the city. She pretended to want to pursue her education and just acted like she was struggling, but she was trying to show her parents she was not a quitter. I could see through it all, though, but I did not say a word. I couldn't. My dad had grown tired of their drama but kept quiet because of my mother. He really loved my mom. My mother has never asked much of him or anyone else. She was always taught to be a people pleaser and take up less space. Money was tight, and I considered taking up a job, maybe two. My dad's health was still poor, and he didn't want to take the risk of leaving my parents on their own, and I took up a part-time job as a waitress while continuing my internship, and Dorothy and her family were living off of us, and it was quite financially strenuous in our hard times. My mom had to take care of my dad too, and I was working late, so I couldn't really help her. We had put all our savings into the new restaurant. Oblivious to the fire that broke out, we had nothing left. What made me so mad, though, was that my aunt had no empathy for us. Jackson and Dorothy would not even help us the slightest bit. I realized that I needed to do something. Dorothy's son, Evan, came home after a really long time. He revealed that my mom's paternal uncle, Steve, had actually given them a huge amount of money to pay off Evan's student debts, and debts that had been accumulated by Jackson because of his gambling habits. He explained that the money was huge and that they were living off of Steve's terms. I knew I had to use this to my advantage somehow. I came up with a plan to give them a taste of their own medicine. I convinced my parents to help me with the plan, and they were reluctant at first, but since they were really tired of Dorothy and Jackson, they decided it was best to listen to me. I told my mother to pretend to be really, really sick. I then called my mom's relatives and told them my mom was sick. My parents would eat before Dorothy and Jackson arrived and pretend there was nothing at home. You'd expect someone to send food over in such a situation, right? But they shamelessly went back to their own houses. We then went over to theirs every day. Uncle Steve and his wife called Dorothy and instructed her to take care of my mother. Dorothy had to comply, and we made her cook and clean up after us. I gave her the same treatment she gave us. I would complain about how dirty and smelly the house was, and I made my mom kick her feet up while ordering her around. If she did not listen, I would call Uncle Steve and complain. I slowly started wreaking havoc and stuff in their house one by one, just wrecking it. I watch videos on the internet, and mind you, some people are really destructive. I clogged the drains, messed with the electrical, and even caused a leak. No one noticed a thing, and Jackson could not fix anything, even if his life depended on it. I had caused the heating system to shut down, which left them in the cold. I even broke the TV. All of my actions went unnoticed, and Jackson could not live without the TV, and it was getting difficult without the heating. The house was getting unsafe to live in, and some of the roof tiles fell, almost injuring Jackson. I didn't want anyone to get hurt, so thank goodness nothing major happened. Me and my parents, on the other hand, locked the house and left for a mini vacation to my dad's brothers and my paternal uncle Brent's house. We all needed a little holiday to get away from all the stress caused by what was going on in our homes. We stayed there for a couple of days. Meanwhile, Jackson and Dorothy had no other option but to have everything at their house fixed. It turned out to be very expensive for them, and they almost went broke because of all the repairs they had to make. When we got back home, we immediately went over to theirs for dinner, and we kept going for a couple of days until Dorothy argued that she could not take care of us anymore. She asked us not to come every day and said that they were expecting too much of her to cook for us every day. I told her that she's being a hypocrite for expecting the same from my parents. Jackson defended Dorothy by saying that they raised my mother and it was now time for her to pay them back. Well, I told them that they were already paid back with the inheritance they kept that was supposed to be given to my mother. The whole room was absolutely filled with silence, and we immediately left. I made sure to call Uncle Steve afterward, describing Dorothy's behavior, and I'm pretty sure she heard an absolute earful from them too. It was getting difficult for Dorothy and Jackson to live without any financial support. Since they both did not have jobs. They wanted to move back home, but my mom's relatives tried very hard to keep them here. My mom's relatives did not want them back in their lives. They were extremely broke. So eventually Jackson had to get some work. Jess still kept calling us for money, and Dorothy kept coming over to apologize. My mom's relatives wanted them to reconcile with us, so my mother obliged. I realized that there was not just getting rid of them, it wasn't going to happen. I feel like going to their house and breaking even more stuff, and I thought the amount that they were spending on repairs would make them move. All my efforts were in vain. I kept telling my mom to cut Dorothy and their relatives off, but she tells me that she can't just cut them off. She then go ahead and explains to me that if it weren't for them, she'd be homeless. I don't believe that's even true, but there's no way I can convince my mom. My dad, on the other hand, is super focused on reviving his business. Good for him. Dorothy and Jackson have gone back to their old ways and have started coming home every day again. I wanted to get rid of her completely, but my mom's refusing to cut her off. I don't know what to do. If anyone reads this, please give me a fresh perspective on what I should do in this situation. Thank you for reading. What's up, everyone? Mr. Reddito here. So I have 3 updates today, but I'll just let you know. The commenters on the original post were not very happy with OP and her parents, saying they're being complete floor mats and just letting people walk all over them with Dorothy and Jackson thinking they can control them. I want to know what you guys think before we jump into the updates, so let me know. Do you think OP and her parents are going to cut them out of their lives? Drop your comments down below and then come back after the story's over and let's see exactly how you guys did. Let's go ahead right now and jump into update number 1. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my post. It really means a lot to me. I never really expected it to blow up, but all the funny comments about my aunt really cracked me up. A lot of you have been commenting that my mom should cut everyone off and we should move on with our lives instead. I really tried very hard to convince her of that, trust me. She's adamant about keeping ties with her sister, and of course that did not affect me. I still went about my petty ways. I wanted to hit her with where it hurt the most. Well, she's definitely the social butterfly and I wanted to embarrass her in public. We had a potluck at the community fair. I mixed the heck of a lot of salt in her cupcake batter right before she was about to pop them in the oven. She made the cupcakes at her house with our stuff, of course. Everyone tried the cupcakes and they were revolting. She had become a laughingstock because she thought they were good. Dorothy's cupcakes had become the talk of the town. The whole situation was so darn embarrassing for her. Whenever she went out, she would be made fun of by everyone who was at the town fair. My mother did not know I had done such a thing, but my father and I had a good laugh over it. Dorothy was slowly starting to resent living here. She came home crying about how mean the people are in this town, and I tried my hardest to hold my laughter in. I figured that maybe if I pulled off more pranks, I could get her to convince Jackson to leave. I started spreading all sorts of rumors about Dorothy and Jackson, and everyone made fun of them. Dorothy had stopped leaving the house out of embarrassment, and people really went creative with the rumors I spread. By the time they get back to me, the stories were so exaggerated that they were far from reality. We started hearing less from her over time. Then I got the news that was music to my ears. Yeah, I'm pretty evil sometimes. Jess had been suspended from college for possession and intake of alcohol inside the college premises. She had to be put into rehabilitation and could not continue college anymore. Jess blamed the whole thing on my dad like usual, and Jess was not allowed to come home either. Dorothy would come home every day and fight with us over Jess. She forced us to, quote, fix the situation, and we couldn't do anything about it. It was all Jess. Dorothy was frustrated and she started coming over and throwing tantrums every single day. She would break stuff at our house and we had to take help from my mom's relatives. They gave her the harsh truth and told her that it was Jess's fault and not to bother us. Dorothy cursed our family and said that we'd never be happy. She stopped bothering us for the time being, but we knew she'd be back. Owing to what happened, I would not really call it good news, but at least we didn't have to pay the rest of Jess's tuition fees. We were so relieved because we knew she was cut from college. She was just out there wasting our money when she was there. We also weren't in a position to pay such a hefty amount, and we're glad that we dodged that bullet. Dorothy and Jackson really have not spoken to us since. We're enjoying the quiet, to be honest, but I know they'll be back at the slightest inconvenience, being the huge freeloaders that they are. I wanted them to be gone for good, but we can't always get what we want, can we? I spread rumors about Jess too. The whole suspension and rehabilitation thing had damaged their reputation in town even more than the cupcakes. I hope it's strong enough reason for them to leave now. I'll keep you guys updated on this. For now, it's quiet. Thanks again to everyone for the immense support. Update number 2. Hey guys, I'm back with another update about my Aunt Dorothy and her weird husband. This one is a complete shocker. So, I really thought it was necessary that I post about it, and things took a really big turn, so you might want to listen up. After the whole Jess got expelled from college drama, as I said in my last post, they didn't really talk to us. Until one day, they came around and started acting as if nothing had ever happened, and it annoyed me a lot, but I found out that Jackson lost his job again. Not surprising at all, they started coming over every day again, and my dad's business has finally picked up. The new restaurant was off to a slow start, but it's now a big hit. Now we have double the income as compared to before. So, it was all going great for us except for the fact that we had to deal with Dorothy and her stupid family. I had planned to leave town to get a job in the city since things are not stable back home, and I would not have to see their faces as often, and even the thought of it made me joyful. I saw Jackson near the high school one day. He was with a high school girl who was like 15. I saw them go to a secluded alley, so I followed, and what I saw was so completely appalling and absolutely disgusting. They were kissing. I knew the girl's mother, so I immediately went and told her, and the young girl said they were just having a little bit of fun, and it was completely normal. She called me all sorts of names for telling her mom, and everyone explained to her that she was still a kid, and that was illegal. The girl's mom called the police, and Jackson went in for sexual assault and, well, grooming of a minor. It was actually revealed that he was in a sexual relationship with the 15-year-old, and the whole thing just absolutely saddened me. Well, despite everything that happened, Dorothy did not want him behind bars, and she asked everyone, including my parents, for help. Everyone refused to help her, and Dorothy started getting defensive about Jackson. The bullcrap she was spewing shocked everyone. She termed his actions as neutral, and well, this time even Jess was disgusted by her father's behavior, and she instantly moved out to go and live with her boyfriend. Dorothy was left all on her own, and everyone, including my mother, had to cut ties with her, owing to her defending her criminal husband. She literally begged everyone, right there at their doorstep, to help her, but no one bothered. My great-grandfather had gotten to hear about her antics from Uncle Steve, and he concluded it was best to cut the family off and let them learn their own lesson. My mom recalled that as a teenager, Jackson would touch her, inappropriate often. My mother had always let it slide because she kept dismissing his bad intentions, and now she realizes his true colors and condemns him for being such a predator. I helped my mother understand how the whole family used her innocence and took advantage of her. I explained to her that she doesn't need to be indebted to them forever for taking care of her as a child. She's learning to set boundaries for herself, but she's still the same old people pleaser. My father and I are relieved that we don't have to deal with Dorothy and Jackson anymore. We all decided to move on with our lives, and I was soon to be leaving my parents' house too. Thank you everybody for all the people who read and commented on my post. I really appreciate it. Update number 3. This is the final update. Hey everyone, I didn't really want to post any more updates on this. I've really moved past it, but since all of you have been blowing up my comments about, quote, what happened to Dorothy? I thought I'd give you one last update. I got a really good job and moved to the city. Life is pretty hectic, but I love the hustle. Unfortunately, before I moved, my great-grandfather passed, and we all went to his funeral. He was known and loved by quite a lot of people, and that was the last time I saw Dorothy. Since my great-grandfather passed, everyone has cut Dorothy off completely, and they all acted like she simply did not exist. Dorothy should have seen it coming. The closely knit family broke apart, and no one cared or contacted each other within a month of the funeral. Weird family, I know. My mom was saddened by the loss of her grandfather and was absolutely grieving. He was the only one in the family who cared for my mom. She was deeply affected, and we all knew he was going to go one day, so eventually my mother accepted his death. Luckily, Dorothy's son, Evan, took her in. Uncle Steve had started threatening Evan that he'd call the police if he did not pay. Evan made Dorothy work too hard in order to pay back the money he borrowed from Uncle Steve. For the first time in her whole life, Dorothy had to work hard for money. She was struggling to work at such an age, but she didn't have an option. Jackson just kept pressuring Dorothy to try to bail him out. She tried her best, but all in vain. Jackson's fury grew day after day, and he wasted away in jail. Jess broke up with her boyfriend and eventually moved in with him too. She, on the other hand, refused to contribute to the family at all. Dorothy had fallen really sick and was in the hospital. The hospital bills piled up and no one even went to see her, let alone help. My mom wanted to go and visit her, but I stopped her and reminded her about the time my dad had a heart attack. But she did not even visit once. She needed to learn her lesson, and now she finally knows how it feels. She still makes an effort to reach out to all the relatives and tries to win them back, but no one cares anymore. They all see her as the bane to their lives and did not want to take the risk of inviting her back. The good news for Dorothy was that she received some of the inheritance from my great-grandfather, and it proved to help the family, and they were able to pay back most of what they owed to Uncle Steve. My family was, too, getting back to our normal lives after almost a year of having Dorothy in it. We honestly thought it was going to stay that way forever, but thankfully, things are back to the way they were. I do feel bad that the precious times I had with my family was wasted like this. The good news is that we fully recovered from the loss of the fire, and my dad is all set to open a new restaurant again. After the success of his second restaurant. Well, this is my final update on Dorothy for real. Thank you everyone for staying so hooked on my story and giving me so much love and comments. It reminded me that the world is filled with people who are willing to support you, and you're never truly alone if you're not wrong.
Oh boy! So I think the craziest part of this story is what we find out to Jackson. What Jackson has been up to, it seems that he likes little girls. And he even had a run-in with OP's mother when she was growing up. I mean, this guy was sick. But we can't also forget about Dorothy. She also was a very toxic person in this story, but I just want to hear from you guys if you were in OP's position. How would you have handled this? I mean, a lot of the commenters from the original post, updates 1, 2, 3, and 4, they were all saying how OP and his mother were just complete floor mats, letting the family run over them. I mean, all they had to do was say, you know what? I live my own life now. Thank you for raising me, even though I had to take care of myself and I was basically your maid. But I'm going to cut you guys off because I simply just don't need you in my life anymore. A lot of the commenters were saying, hey, it's pretty easy to do that, but I do want to hear from you guys to know what you think about it. So drop your comments down below in the comment section. My name's Mr. Reddito. I narrate stories every single day, so if you guys want stories, all you gotta do is click that subscribe button located right about here. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'll catch you tomorrow, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.